Well, I tell you what. I was told we might have somebody coming tonight. Maybe we still will. My hope is that one of the things that I have been just kind of dwelling on is the sense of family that we have, both spiritual family, regular family. Quote, we had, as pastor of the week, official pastor of the week, I had an appointment with a family, Eternal Valley calls. I haven't gotten a call in a while, but Eternal Valley called, saying they needed a Baptist pastor. I never know what that really means. But turned out it really was needed in terms of the family heritage, most of which had been spent up at Santa Clarita Baptist Church rather than Grace Baptist Church. But it just got me thinking a little bit about family legacy. I think when you read a lot of scripture, especially Old Testament into New Testament, you see a lot of the references to family as so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so. There's a sense almost implied in my mind that sonship, if you will, is more like carrying on a family name. It's almost like carrying on a family persona, and I don't know if we do that anymore, if anybody ever thinks about the legacy of a family, that they do that. If I think back on I am son of John, which means nothing to you. And, you know, especially in an age where being kind of attached to the whole idea of genealogy and everybody looking back to see if there's somebody important that was in their family line to make them more famous than they are. I mean, I don't know. My family is related to the poet Longfellow, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Aren't you impressed? There you go. The rest of them all just stole sheep. So, but my sense is, we all know that we're related. We all know we have a relationship that is physical, biological, if you will. We're also all related to God. And the whole idea, especially as I look at Luke's genealogy that he gives, he tells the whole story of Jesus' birth and the angels and John the Baptist and all that stuff. And then he breaks into the idea of Jesus, son of supposedly Joseph, and then goes all the way back down to Adam, son of God. Which means that every single person in this room is in that legacy. All right, somewhere there's a son of, and your family is connected to it, which is pretty cool, actually. Now that's that's obviously a physical connection, and then we have a spiritual family that we are connected to by faith. Again, God instituted it. God wanted you to be in His family. He wouldn't have sought you out. He wouldn't have given you a mind to understand and believe, etc., etc. And I really enjoy the fact that Jesus chose to refer to Himself often as the Son of Man. Okay? Oftentimes thinking about the Son of the Father. And it was really after the whole picture of Jesus being baptized that Luke jumps into that genealogy, because that's when the Father says, "This is my Son," right? And then he goes, and speaking of sons, Jesus, son of Jesus, son, and then it goes all the way back down to Adam. But the fact that Jesus refers to Himself as Son of Man, to me is very special. It has a lot of implications throughout the Bible in terms of His authority, in terms of His enthronement as king, but also in terms of suffering and the things He did, right? The Son of Man is being betrayed, the things like that. But to call Himself Son of Man was something very important to me, and that is He wants to be related to you, all right? He knew who His Father was, but He wanted you to know that He wanted to be as well the Son of mankind, so that you would feel as a sister, as a brother to him. And to me, that's pretty special. Not that he would deny that he, in fact, he claimed to be the Son of God, but he oftentimes referred to himself as Son of Man. And to me, that's important. And it kind of gives importance to me, especially because he wants that relationship. And I really believe that the Bible speaks so clearly of God's desire to be rightly related to you. He really wanted you to feel like family. And we don't ever feel that way until we reach for Christ, until we finally see the truest family connection. And that's something that I think is really, really critical for us. John says it, he says it in John 15, no longer do I call you servants. The servant doesn't know what his father's doing or his master's doing, but I have called you friends. And we can think of Jesus in a lot of different ways, and we should, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that he looks at you and says, I want you to be my friend. I am the Son of Man, right, in that sense. Following Christ is not, however, an individual endeavor, and I think that's why I think that the fact that many people who have been in this choir have talked to me about being a part of this family, and they enjoy the family nature of it. And I think that's something that I've always wanted to be felt here. I've always wanted people not just feel like a part of a singing group, but a part of a family that cares, a part of a family that knows you as much as you want to make yourself known, wants to pray for you, wants to help along the way. But we can't do that together. And then I believe that's why Christ, that Paul speaks in Ephesians of, in him, in Jesus, you also are being built together into a dwelling place. If we're not a part of a body, and this is one of the things that I'm finding more and more as people's lives that I have to be involved in outside of you kind of go south, is that they tend to disappear from the body. They tend to when things aren't going right, they'll tend to draw away. And if you're not a part of a body, you really lose not just a family connection, but you lose a usefulness, because God saved you to be a part of a body so that he can fashion that body with you involved in it. You are an integral part of it. And if you're not a part of a body, think of it in terms of a construction site, you're this beautiful piece of wood that's just sitting out here all by itself, but it's not a part of what's being built together, right? And using that piece of wood is what then gives, if you will, not only purpose to that piece of wood, it gives you purpose in life, but you gain strength when that piece of wood is then joined to another piece of wood. So you begin to see what a building, a dwelling has to do with you as a person, but also with how you function together, if you will. And there's some precautions, and I've done this through the years, and some of you, I think most of you have, if you remember back, some of you have been in here a long time, about me interviewing you when you come into choir and things like that. Because anyone who's done construction knows that the kind of building material you use is important. Okay, if we're trying to build a family together, each nail, each frame, every piece of wood that you're going to do can add to the strength of what we're building here, or if it's not up to speed, or if it's not the quality that it needs to be, or it's not the strength that it needs to be, it can also weaken the integrity of that body, right? So it's wise to take time to see if someone's faith is authentic. It's wise to make sure that we're all shaped kind of in a like-minded truth. It's the very thing we do as a church when people want to come and become a member of the church. We don't just say, sure, why not? It's a great place to be, right? We interview them now. We talk about what they believe. We talk about whether they know the gospel, all that kind of stuff. And it's not to say that, it becomes an exclusive club. It's as exclusive as God wants to make it. Hear that clearly. We're not trying to keep people out. But we are trying to make sure that the structure that we're building, the family that is being put together here, is being put together by the resources that God has shaped and not the world has shaped. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty important. And I think as well, the choicest piece of wood all by itself needs to be then correctly placed in the body. In In other words, if you put it in the wrong place, it could weaken the body, it could make things. So I think in that sense as well, we want to be sure that people who come into this family, our choir family, are incorporated correctly into the place, so that if somebody is an alto and I say, you know, I need more first sopranos, why don't you just sing first soprano? Those kinds of things can be dangerous to the integrity of the whole. But when you think more largely, and I do want you to think that didn't come here to build a choir family to be by itself. I wanted it to be something that would actually impact and enlarge the integrity of this whole church. And I've always appreciated the fact that so many of you are involved in ABFs and grace groups and women's studies and men's studies, because that begins to move you into a larger family setting and makes it more secure. You feel more secure in a body when you're more involved. If the only thing you do is come on a Thursday night to choir and come when the choir is singing, you're weak in that particular situation, and you could be stronger if you allow the other pieces of this thing to come together. I know I'm just kind of moving through this in my head, but for the most part, it just makes me grateful for what God has done to build His church. It's great, and I'm also grateful for what it feels like to be a part of a family in a family sense when we come together week after week. But I do want to make sure that you appreciate what the church is as a whole, and if we can be a model for that for the church, if we can create a family sense in here that people say that's what we want all of our church, activity and in our church groups to be, then all the better, And I want to necessarily put this group up there on a pedestal and say, look everybody, this is what you want right here. But this is what you want. And that has been the history of this group. That has been for us forever and ever. And I can't tell you how many people who've left who would say, that's the one thing I miss is not having that sense of choir and the community that came with it. So we can do that together. You're with me? Yeah.